podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Cox Panoramic Wi-Fi includes advanced security to help protect all your connected devices. You'll get real-time alerts. Oh, like this one, so you don't have to worry about malware. Or when your kid downloads a song from a shady link. And now all your computer can play is...
red color, where are you?
all blocked, thanks to advanced security, included with Cox Panoramic Wi-Fi. Advanced security must be enabled in the Panoramic Wi-Fi app. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Leaving out the avocado in your salad to save money is not good for morale or your fiber intake. Luckily, State Farm knows the value of the little things. It's why they've got options like insuring your home and ride with surprisingly great rates on both. Because you shouldn't have to give up what you love for great insurance. For surprisingly great rates, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.
Now, I told you that I'd be doing the last Love Tennis Podlet recently. Turns out to have been a lie. This is the last Love Tennis Podlet because I can't count, but we are now done. We are finally at an end. Wimbledon is closing down for another year. It's sometimes weird to think that this place exists for 50 weeks of the year because we really only think about it for 2 weeks. But it does, in fact, exist for the other 50 weeks, but I'm just seeing everything that's being shipped out, and I can assure you there's a lot less stuff on the site. I'm James Gray of inews.co.uk and the iNewspaper. I've got George Belshaw, the famed tennis writer, on the other end of the line. We're going to have a look back at a brilliant men's final. That statement in itself apparently is controversial. If you write that on Twitter, people will not agree with you. I am always willing to concede that sometimes things are more exciting in the flesh than they are on TV. But we shall discuss that anon. Novak Djokovic is the Wimbledon champion again. It's his 4th title in a row here, 7th overall. He's a 21-time Grand Slam winner. There are so very many records. He hasn't been beaten on centre court since 2013 because all of his losses since then have come out on number 1 court, which I'm sure he's fairly glad he actually wasn't on there at all this year. George, a worthy winner?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to say so, don't you? He's shown remarkable consistency on the grass. I think there's an awful lot of context we'll kind of come on to, I think, with this win for Novak in terms of where it sits in his career going forward and, the limitations he's kind of placed on his own career. But there's quite a lot of pressure on him before this tournament in many ways, in terms of that GOAT status, which I know does wind people up, but let's be honest, that is really driving Rafa and Novak right now, this kind of climb for the most Grand Slams. I thought Kyrgios played really well in the match actually today on the whole. I think he would have caused a lot of people a lot of problems, and I was just really impressed by how Novak I'm not saying he made it look easy. It was a tight, competitive match, but he just kept his cool. He wasn't getting engaged too much in what Nick was up to at the other end. He looked focused. I think Kyrgios' comments after the match were really interesting in terms of it was like, I don't feel he did anything that amazing today. He was just always there. And that is kind of Djokovic in a nutshell. There are amazing shots. People play down some of the amazing things he does on the court. He's a remarkable physical specimen, but he's just relentless, isn't he? And he just never stops. Calvin always goes, he's the greatest match player of all time. If there was someone you'd want to play a match for you and your life depended on it, he'd be that man. And I thought he's had another good tournament. I wouldn't even say he's had to come out of 3rd gear maybe at times. Today was maybe a little bit higher, but he's strolled through fairly comfortably, even in the moments where he's looked like he's out of comfort. He's then kind of just turned it around with kind of aplomb, I would say, half the time.
I think it's been really interesting. I think this is part of late stage Novak, as I like to call this current sort of iteration of him.
We don't know how later stage it is, by the way.
Well, quite, yeah, we could have another 5 years or more, who knows. But I think one of the things that has become his signature is comebacks. He lost the first set of the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and the final. And at no point did I really think he was going to lose the match, even when he was 2 sets down to Jannik Sinner. I really wasn't particularly confident. I still had Djokovic probably a 70% favourite at that point to win the next 3 sets. And it's because he's so often done it. And I think Kyrgios summed it up quite well today. He's just always there. And that was, he made like 1 unforced error in the 3rd set. I think either the 3rd or the 4th set. I can't remember which one because they're quite similar. He made 1 unforced error. And again, a guy like Kyrgios has nightmares about playing someone who does that.
Kyrgios sort of said he didn't do anything amazingly, but the one thing he did give him credit for, and the one thing we should really give him credit for, it's an obvious thing to give him credit for, is the return. I mean, I don't know how he gets to half of these serves, honestly. He makes it look so easy. I know you're there in the flesh, James, so it's maybe a bit different, but even on TV, you're watching serves, Kyrgios sits down, it's like, he's going to get a frame to that at best, and then it's back, and it's like deep, and it's difficult, and it's astonishing.
Funnily enough, I didn't actually think Novak returned that well today.
No?
I thought he was going to return much better than he did. I mean, he didn't, by the IBM stat tracker, he made no unforced errors on return. Now, admittedly, unforced errors on return are pretty rare because if you have a play on the ball,
harsh, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's like how do you define it? So I don't think that's particularly useful. But it does kind of sum it up. When he had, similarly, Kyrgios, and actually, George, you'll remember last year during the Berrettini final that Djokovic was hitting these 75-mile-an-hour second serves. Yeah. He did the same thing in the first set today. He was hitting 75-mile-an-hour second serves into Kyrgios' backhand, and he was firing them long. And I looked at it and I thought, has he just basically picked up his game plan from the Berrettini match and kind of played it again here? And actually, I saw Roddick talking about it on Twitter, Andy Roddick, who's a brilliant analyst, and I wish he would do more, but he just doesn't. He's not really that interested.
There's a year he came on the BBC, by the way, and that was like my favourite year of all time.
I know, but he was also a big tennis guy, and that's clearly not mass appeal. But he did talk really well about how Kyrgios' backhand's kind of underrated, and that actually it's a very flat shot, and it doesn't do a lot, but it does very little, if you like, and it's very difficult to attack off. And actually, that was quite tricky for Novak. He more often than not was slicing off the Kyrgios backhand, and he wasn't always winning those backhand-to-backhand rallies. And in the first set, if there was a mistake, and I'm not tactically aware enough of how to deal with it, but I thought that Djokovic shouldn't have been allowing himself to get into these sort of slice-on-slice rallies where realistically he doesn't have much of a competitive edge. If you go topspin to topspin in the backhand, Djokovic is going to win that 9 times out of 10, but he was losing the long rallies in the first set. I think he was down 8-3 in 9+ shot rallies for the first 11 games. Now that's completely insane against Nick Kyrgios, who's looking for first strike. And I think it was a reflection of how high Kyrgios' level was to begin with, but I think it was also a reflection of maybe Djokovic just kind of programming the computer, which I think he does quite a lot. I think he's just like, let's get some more data into this computer. Let's just play kind of neutral tennis, and then I'll work it out after that. And sometimes that'll cost him a set, but he knows that's not a problem.
Do we ever think, because this is happening, as you said, like more and more frequent, we call it late stage Novak, or at least penultimate late stage Novak. Is there a sense he's letting people go ahead? There's a sort of a hustle. Do you think there's anything about that?
You've said this before. I don't buy it. I mean, I just don't. When Kyrgios said the other day that he tanked the last game of the 4th set against Nakashima to try and, to give him a false sense of security and think that he's gone, I don't believe that for a second. I don't really think that. I mean, it's possible.
One was that good to do it. It would be Novak, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's good enough, and I think he's devious enough, without making that sound too derogatory. Like, for example, I don't think Rafa could do it, because I don't think Rafa could make himself.
He's not wired like that.
Yeah, I just don't think. I think Rafa's too competitive. Like, I just think to the extent that he would find it difficult to lose a set deliberately, if you know what I mean. I just don't really see him being able to do that. But I don't think it's impossible, I suppose. But I'm not sure I really buy it, to be honest. He's just. it's too weird a tactic. There's too much risk associated with it. Like, especially against a guy like Kyrgios, who, like, if his serve just gets into, like, into its 90% rhythm, like, you just lose a set. Like you just basically coin flipping a set on a tiebreak, and that, Kyrgios has won a lot of matches where he's won a set because his serve's brilliant for 35 minutes and people can't get near him. And, you say Novak returned really well today. Kyrgios did hit 30 aces. I mean, it's not bad.
I think it's testament to how well Novak returned, in the sense that Kyrgios served amazingly, I thought. He really, I've seen Kyrgios have matches where his serve can go a little bit AWOL and there'll be a little bit of drop of conversation. I thought it was unreturnable about 90% of the time, and Novak was still probably getting it back close to 50% of the time. So 30 aces doesn't demean Novak's achievement. Like, it would have been 60 against most people, I think.
If I could do the maths, I would work it out, but 30 aces having hit 125 first serves. Okay, there's the odd second serve ace in there, but not many. That's 25% of Kyrgios' first serves, and Novak's gone on to win quite a lot of other points on serve, which I suppose is testament to your point. So Novak won 43 points on serve, again on Kyrgios' serve. When you consider there are 30 aces, you can see that the maths there is pretty good. He's doing 65% of, like, serves that he gets back in play, he wins the point.
And, like, you could see in the match actually times where Novak was just totally guessing. And this is the other kind of dynamic to this serve return. The Kyrgios was so hard to read. There was the odd ace where Djokovic was just gambling on the other direction and he was getting a rhythm, trying to work out where he was going. So, if you're thinking that he's then kind of happy to be aced if it goes past him, because that's how difficult it is to get to, and then, as you say, he's actually having such a good success rate on those other points. I think that's probably kind of summing up his return strategy in many ways. And I thought it's a bloody hard serve to return. He made a pretty good fist of it, I thought.
It's actually one of those serves that when you watch it in the flesh, you do get a different idea of it, because you start to understand. Novak talked about it before the match, about the fluidity of the service motion. Like, when you watch other people serve, there are stages. There's the toss, there's the load up, and the trophy position, I think coaches talk about. And it's kind of like you can see how people time their split step, how they time when they're going to read the serve. But with Kyrgios, there's no opportunity for that. He's got the big lean back. He shows you his sort of the sole of his left foot when he leans back to load up, and then he's just served, and you've got no opportunity really to think at any other point. So I can see why that really did for Novak at times, or at least in that first set. And a little bit like the women's final yesterday, there was a point in that second set when they were both playing really well, and it was a brilliant tennis match. And it was the exact boxing match that we were kind of hoping it would be. It was the big puncher looking for the big opportunity, and it was the skillful mover, the sort of Vasily Lomachenko of the piece, moving brilliantly and trying to pick opportunities. And for, I reckon, about maybe a set, we got that. Maybe not the beginning of the second set, but certainly the end of the second set and moments, bits of the third set as well. It just never... I do understand why people at home will have said it was boring to watch, because, the middle of the... Well, George, you shake your head at me, but the middle of the first set, there were 16 consecutive points on serve. In fact, more than that. There were 16, 17, 18 consecutive points on serve. That's not brilliant to watch. When the ball got in play, the points were fascinating because you had a bit of a stalemate. There were lots of drop shots, lots of stuff going on at the net, which was great to watch. But I understand what people mean. If you're selective about which bits you watch, I guess it was boring. But
see, this is where I totally disagree. That I think the quality's so high that they're winning these long streaks. Like, that's how I view it. That I'm watching it like, proper. If we're taking like the boxing pun on, it's clean hitting. It's world class, top tennis. I don't understand how you can possibly sit there in that match and think, God, that wasn't very good. What bloody matches do you want here, people? Like, seriously, get a grip. Like, the levels are astonishing. Like,
I know, because people complain about these like tedious baselining matches that Djokovic and Nadal always play, and then you get a match like this, which is quite serve dominated with kind of spates of other things, and they complain about that. I don't know. People will always complain, and it comes down to taste as well. You know, you always hear the vocal minority.
I do love a big serve, to be fair. You know, that is a big bias for me. I love the Kyrgios serve. I can't get enough of it. I think it's just one of the best shots in tennis, and I love the Djokovic return, and that for me in itself is a really interesting battle. So maybe it's my tennis nerd coming through there, James. But I think people are being very harsh if
I love anything. I love anything that happens in front of the service line. Like, you know, Djokovic playing. I mean, there were a couple of drop shots Djokovic played today that were so clever and just like awareness of space. So there was a moment when it was one of these classic like slicing rallies, and Kyrgios was on top of the baseline to an extent, but it was a slicing rally, backhand to backhand, and then Kyrgios sliced one a little bit wider, and therefore Djokovic could meet it a bit closer to the net, and he just played this perfect drop shot into the forehand side of the court, which is the kind of the hard side to get over the net, if that makes sense, because you're not playing over the angle. And Kyrgios just never saw it coming, and basically just slipped over on the baseline because he was so set in this kind of concentrating on the slice. And he played one or two others that I just thought were really fabulous awareness of space.
I think if you had your checklist for a match of everything you'd want to see in a match, you know, you've got to love a massive serve at points. You know, that is part of the match. That's like your big knockout blows. You know, that's what Kyrgios can kind of turn a match. He goes love 30 down and he bangs 4 aces. You know, that's gripping in itself, like serving under that pressure. Got your amazing returns from Novak. You've got your tweeners in there. We had an underarm serve. We had all this fun kind of drop shot stuff as well. Big ludicrously long rallies, gut punching, some screaming at the umpire, screaming at the fans. You know, I think you've got all the ingredients for a great match. I thought it was a really good final.
Yeah, I would agree. The fourth set was a bit dull. I actually thought I felt like it was really. I should point out it was really hot today. Like, it was 30 degrees. It gets humid in centre court, especially since they put the roof on it. Even when the roof's open, because it has extra kind of
cover.
Yeah, cladding, I suppose, on the top of it. It means there's very little wind actually on the court on a day like that, and it was super humid. And, you know, at one point Kyrgios was standing between points in the shade that the kind of the back of the court provided. And I felt like in the fourth set, no games went to deuce in the fourth set. And I felt like there was a sort of, they both kind of went, I'm not going to like put much energy into trying to break serve here because we're probably going to a tie break. And there was this kind of acceptance.
The tie break was probably the most disappointing part of the match for me, actually. Yeah. I didn't mind the set as a whole. You know, there was a few kind of ropey moments for Novak when he was serving for it kind of late on, you know, kind of thinking about the drama of a fifth, but Novak just got ahead too quickly, didn't he? And
yeah. I mean, he said afterwards that he read a couple of serves quite well, and that gave him an opportunity, and it did. It got him into points. I think there were 3 unforced errors from Kyrgios in the first 6 points, and when you're 5-1 down, that's game over.
It was actually the time most of the match where his kind of external stuff where he's screaming at his box really affected his tennis. He just started whacking it for fun and taking on stupid shots like forehands winners from miles beyond the tram line that you're just never going to make, or make like 1 in 70. Maybe a bit higher for him, to be fair.
It's quite impressive that we've made it 15 minutes into this podlet and not talked about like Kyrgios antics, for want of a better word. There weren't too many of them, although there were some significant ones. He at one point got interrupted between first and second serve by a woman who had apparently been talking to him pretty constantly from the second row on the far side in the sunny stand.
How many drinks had she apparently had, James?
She had, according to Nick Kyrgios, well, basically the umpire said, we can't kick her out, we don't know which one it is. And he's like, I can tell you exactly which one it is. And so René Lichtenstein says, which one? He's like, it's the woman in the dress who looks like she's had about 700 drinks. who then got coined 7 Drinks Lady on Twitter. I managed to identify 7 Drinks Lady. I'll tell you exactly what happened after that. So Lichtenstein gets on the phone, goes, you know, there's this woman. Just look for anyone who looks like they had 700 drinks. She did not look like she had 700 drinks, by the way. So first, one of the service stewards, which are all the sort of military people that you see standing around, came up to her and had a bit of a chat and gave her a glass of water, and then went away. And then one of the security people in her suit came up and said, no, you need to come with us, love. And that was about 3 games later. And so she went off. And then another security person came out and took the friend who she was sitting with, who looked like she might have been her mother by the age gap and the similarity in looks, and took her away. And then 3 games later, they all came back and sat down with loads of water. So I don't really know what went on there, but I should know.
Did a breathalyzer or something?
I don't know, because she was in the second row, right, of the stand. So they've got to walk up the stairs to the vomitorium to get out. And I thought, well, here's the test then. This is like a roadside alcohol test. She's got to walk up these stairs. And she was wearing wedges, and she did it almost flawlessly. So I don't think she had 700 drinks. But, Nick was... Go on.
Did I misread? I was having a read through the Kyrgios transcript, so obviously wasn't there just before we came on. And there seemed to be a question from someone who said she'd had 2 drinks and was really supporting you. Did someone actually manage to track her down and talk?
There was a news journalist at the front who seemed to have tracked her down. I even heard there was an implication she was a lawyer of some description, but I really don't know. It's speculation at best.
One to watch for tomorrow's headlines.
Yeah, there's a real front of the book story in there somewhere. I mean, really, most of Nick's chuntering that was interesting, that's when he got an audible obscenity warning, because he wanted a first serve back for getting interrupted, and the umpire said no. And he then missed his second serve, and he said it's an effing joke, it's a joke. And so Liechtenstein gave him his 3rd fine of the week. It takes him up to £15,000.
I can't remember the people. There are a few people making the same joke, and maybe I'm just too easily amused. But I wanted to give a shout out to the Twitter community for all who were claiming the 700 drink disturber was Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge. I thought that was very amusing.
Seems unlikely somehow, although I do think that Prince George might have learnt some new vocabulary in the front row of the royal box. Him just going, I heard Grandfather Philip use that once.
Apparently he was asking, went down with William to talk to Novak afterwards, and was just asking, how on earth do you return Kyrgios?
I mean, it's a
fair
fair question.
He enjoyed it.
To be honest, that's the best question I've heard all day, and I've been in 2 press conferences. Yeah, quite. There was also some good shouting from Kyrgios at his box, complaining that they kept relaxing at like 40 love and 40-15. I think what you have to understand about Kyrgios shouting at his box is that it's actually like his expression of stress, and he's actually really talking to himself. Like, he did give up 40 love a couple of times, and it's actually him saying to himself, why did I relax at 40 love? Why did I relax at 40-15? The box is just a crutch, really. And he has also worked out in the kind of morality of tennis, you can't scream at line judges, you can't scream at umpires, you can't scream at your opponents, you can't really scream at the crowd, but you can scream at your box and no one will really have a go at you about it. I don't think it's okay, but if the box are okay with it, which it seems they are, and if Kyrgios is okay with it and he's not swearing, then I suppose we have to tolerate it. I mean, it's not a great look when he did spend an entire sit-down, like, hollering at the top of his voice at them, which it's a bit unsavoury, but, it's good drama.
We need a bit more Gilles Savara action, don't we?
Just walking out.
Storming off. I think that's got to be the go-to for coaches, but I don't think you'd be brave enough to do that.
Well, I've got a genuine question. When do they go to the loo? Because, like, if you're not there, like, you haven't got time in a changeover to go out and back in. And, like, I swear to God, his missus must have a shiwi or something, because there is just no danger I could get through a 3-hour match with all that stress where you just, like, stress drink water and not have to go to the loo at some point. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you're like praying Novak goes off for a 10-minute toilet break so that you can run downstairs. But actually, the thing is, he doesn't stop yapping at them at the changeovers. I mean, that's often the time he's having the longest conversations. You can't really even nip off there. No,
it is a problem. Anyway, he was beaten in 4 sets, and we've barely talked about Nick Kyrgios.
Opening a business checking account shouldn't be harder than running your business. So why do most banks still make you go into a branch? With Live Oak Bank, you can open an account online in minutes. That's because they put you at the center of every decision they make. With convenient digital access and superior customer support, that's small business checking simplified. Open a business checking account today at liveoakbank.com/businesschecking.
The world needs more thinkers, more doers, listeners, and leaders. And it's the mission of Radford University to create and nurture students who are responsive, resilient, and real. Become a Highlander. Discover your unique path and make a positive impact on the world. This is Radford University. Find out more about how you can join the Highlander family. Visit radford.edu/now. That's radford.edu/now.
This episode is brought to you by Sleep Number. It's summertime, where long days and hot nights make it harder to get the quality sleep you need. Sleep IQ data shows sleepers who use their Sleep Number 360 smart bed technology get almost 30 minutes more restful sleep per night. That's up to 170 hours per year. Discover how to get a more restful sleep each night by visiting your local Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com/Spotify. Sleep Number takes care of the science. All you have to do is sleep.
It should just be noted, by the way, George, before we move on to Kyrgios, Novak Djokovic at the moment isn't going to play a Grand Slam match until May next year. As it stands, he cannot get into the US because he's unvaccinated, and he is banned from applying for a visa in Australia for 3 years because he was deported. He said in press afterwards, we said, "What's your plan?" He says, "Well, I'm going to take a couple of weeks holiday and then hope for some good news from the US." Even if it says something quite similar about hoping, Novak said, "I'm not vaccinated, I'm not planning to get vaccinated, so the only good news I can have is them removing the mandate, which requires you to be vaccinated if you want a green card or a visa or anything." He says, "I don't think an exemption is a realistic possibility. I don't know what exemption would be about." So he's basically he says, it's just whether they remove or not remove in time for me to get into the USA.
I was thinking about this earlier. This is a weird era, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like when you hear people like going on about like Margaret Court's record, like, well, she wasn't really that good, just people weren't travelling to Australia. Like, this is going to be bizarre in a few years, with like people are looking back like, so why was Medvedev not at Wimbledon? What happened to Novak at the Australian Open? You know, people like 30 years time who didn't try to follow it at the time, just looking back at these records like, what on earth is going on?
Nick Kyrgios makes 4 consecutive Grand Slam finals, and everyone's like, well, there wasn't a full field for any of them, in fairness. I mean, do we go on?
I was just going to say, but in all seriousness, you know, this has a massive bearing on the legacy of these great guys, because there's no, let's be honest, there's no. I'm going to be careful how I rephrase this. I was going to say there's absolutely no way Nadal wins the Australian Open if Djokovic is there, but I don't want to annoy our Nadal fan base too much. But it's highly unlikely to me, given their Grand Slam records on hard courts, that Djokovic doesn't go there and win that.
I'm going to fact check you on that, George. Is that true? Is their Grand Slam record on hard courts that Djokovic leaning?
Yes, he's not beaten him since like 2013 at the US Open final or something like that.
But isn't it not the case that they've only played twice or something in that time? I just wonder if
he's not been on a hard court anyway, but he has also. Yeah, to be fair, that might be a fair point, but he's not beaten him on a hard court in that time anyway.
What was your overriding point going to be?
Well, that we'd actually be talking about Novak on 22 right now and Nadal on 21. It was going to be my kind of point. You know, that in itself is a massive bulge. If Novak can't play the next two and Nadal manages to win the US and Australia again, which I'm not sure he will, I think Medvedev will come back pretty strong and that'll be pretty close at the US and Australia. But, you know, these are big implications. I actually think, you know, US has always been a bit of a weird one for Novak, so maybe that matters less. But if he's out of Australia for 3 years and Rafa can get himself fit enough and pick up the odd one or two, then that's the massive implications. Go on, James, how many hardcore slam matches? Maybe not as many as you like.
I'd struggle for a slam, but outdoor
2019 it was.
Well, no, so I'm going to do overall tally outdoor hardcore. I think it's Djokovic 16-5. Now, I've had to just quickly tally that, but I think that's the case, and that's
career as a whole.
Yeah, career. That's career.
Yeah, I don't think Nadal's beaten him since like 2013 on hardcourt. Unless
actually, and now I've got it chronologically. It is 2013, the last time he's beaten him on an outdoor hardcourt.
Final, I think it was.
It was indeed, yeah. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive outdoor hardcourt victories for Novak Djokovic. So I think you can reasonably say you expect him to win. It should also be noted they've only played twice on hard courts outdoor in the last 6 years. But Djokovic did win them both in straight sets. I
mean, the last one I watched that I can remember was the 2019 Australian Open final, and that was brutal. I mean, that's one of the best matches I've ever seen Novak play. So, you know, I'm not going after Rafa too much there, but the way Rafa made other people look in that tournament to then have Novak do that to him was a real kind of sign of the golfing class.
And it only took 2 hours. I mean, that is one-sided, to say the least. We should talk about Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player, a bit. He said afterwards he said, if I'd won, I might have struggled for motivation, but he didn't win. It doesn't matter. But he did say that he felt like he belonged. He didn't feel out of place. He felt the match was within his grasp, which may or may not be true. But one thing we can discuss is, do you think he belongs in Grand Slam finals and more of them?
Well, I mean, he belonged in the sense he made a really good fist of it today. He didn't strike me as someone. It didn't strike me as someone who was necessarily in their first Grand Slam final. To be honest, I wasn't watching it like this guy's getting completely overawed by the occasion. I thought he was just beaten kind of by a pretty good guy on the day. He played well. I thought. I genuinely think he beats 99% of the field play like that on grass court today. I don't think that's too uncontroversial. My one thing I would say about him is that I think we said before the tournament he had a really good draw. That was true. The draw got better with a lot of issues in that half of the draw. I'm thinking people like Berrettini, obviously Rafa pulling out of that match. Could he have kind of come through heavy metal matches like those? Even Felix, I think, was in that half of the draw. Would he have been coming through 2 or 3 of those and then kind of just keeping it close with Novak? I don't know. It beat Tsitsipas, which I suppose is no bad thing, but I've often pointed out that he's not a grass court player. Many people think he is, but you still can't take that away from him. But yeah,
if he's seeded at the US Open, big if, but let's just say he goes and does well at Cincinnati.
What's he now, like 37?
Well, he's actually going to drop because of the points situation, so I think he's going to be 45. But let's say he picks up some points in the American hardcourt swing and gets himself seeded for the US Open. Do you think he can threaten there? Or do you think that he doesn't beat the top 10, which is full of kind of hardcourt dogs, like Daniil Medvedev, Andrei Rublev, Carlos Alcaraz, to an extent Stefanos Tsitsipas?
I think every big match with him is a coin flip. It's just the question, could he, even if he was, say, a top 32 seed, he could be meeting Medvedev in the 3rd round and then have to back it up by beating Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals. You know what I mean? It's that relentless backing up. And I think
he said he was exhausted today, which I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I think there will be better players at the US Open because they're not so good on grass, if that makes sense. So I think it'll be tougher for him to necessarily go and win that. But look, I don't want to downplay his achievement or anything. I've always been a big fan of his brand of tennis and always thought he's comfortably good enough to reach this level. I'm not sure it'll happen consistently. I think he was pretty honest about that as well, wasn't he? In kind of the comments he had about it. But you never know. The talent's there. The application seems like it's been there the last few weeks. He was quite honest about that, talking about not been going out for beers and stuff. That actually can help, Nick, sometimes, kind of being in the zone. But I don't know. I didn't think he'd win a Grand Slam from probably the age of 25. I thought his time had passed. I'd say the chances increased by maybe like 7% and will increase again by 30% when Novak and Rafa disappear. But he could disappear by the age of 30. This is the flip side. Like, I don't know how long he goes. He's made $1 million today.
Yeah.
Be quite, that's a lot of money for someone who's not that invested in tennis and kind of it's always talked about winding it down. I hope he gets the bit between his teeth and carries on, because he's great to watch. He gets eyes on this sport, and whatever else, what people hate him, love him.
Wimbledon 2026. That's
the first year you think Novak.
That's my
is
prediction.
Gone.
Yeah, no Novak. Realistically,
what about Berrettini?
Berrettini would be a threat, obviously.
He's been hard done by this tournament, hasn't he? Really?
Yeah, but
he was in amazing form.
Berrettini versus Kyrgios,
it's a coin flip. It's a total coin flip.
Yeah, and I would say Kyrgios has the better backhand.
I'd agree, but Kyrgios would struggle to get it to Berrettini's backhand the way he was serving before.
Quite. And then what? I mean, Alcaraz, I think, is going to be good on grass. I think he's going to be a problem on grass eventually. Hurkacz isn't going away. I'm refusing to buy the Felix, whatever Felix is selling at the moment, I'm afraid. Well, You know, he's got to start winning big matches. It's the same with Dennis. I absolutely love Denis Shapovalov. I think he's brilliant to watch, but he seems to be A, an idiot, and B, a bottle job. Those two things are not great.
Canadian listeners won't be happy. We do love them both, really. We just want more from them, don't we? Because they're so good.
George, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love watching Denis Shapovalov play. I think his backhand is one of the most beautiful shots in tennis. Like
the jumping
by a
backhand.
distance. The jumping left-handed, one-handed backhand. I mean, it's bloody mesmeric. But he just does so many stupid things and says so many stupid things and doesn't back it up by winning big matches. I was saying to someone earlier about this podcast, I try not to be opinionated because it's not my role. My role is to kind of steer the ship. But sometimes I feel I've got to rock the boat as well. So I apologise if you're a big Denis Shapovalov fan. If you want to let me know how wrong I am, then there's two things you can do. One, you can let us know on Twitter or on email at lovetennispod@gmail.com. Or next week, you can go to my Twitter. I will put my Xbox handle on there, and you can take me on in Matchpoint Tennis Championships. As you know, they've been sponsoring us throughout Wimbledon. It's been great. It means we can do a podcast for you every day. The game came out last week on the 7th of July, so if you're not already an expert, you're behind, so catch up. It's great fun to play. You can create your own player and go around the tour and make all the decisions that players have to make about, whether to dump your girlfriend and move to them. No, I mean, you can't do that. But you can play good tournaments. You can play real players. There's a load of licensed players in there. I recently won my first title in my career mode against Pablo Carreño Busta, and it was extremely satisfying, although he is a tough old opponent. So you can play me online because it's multi-platform, so it doesn't matter if you've got PC, PlayStation 4 or 5 or Xbox, you can log on and take me on. Just finally, George, I want to talk very briefly, because I'm a bit worried she might walk past and get embarrassed by me being so nice about her. Sue Barker today kind of closed the book on 30 years of presenting BBC's Wimbledon coverage. She, for most listeners, she is the face and the voice of Wimbledon. George, I mean, I assume it's the same for you, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw Liam Brodie sum up quite nicely that she's probably had as big an impact on this tournament as the majority of the players over the last 30 years. She's been such a kind of constant figure. I always remember as a little boy, when my mum used to watch Wimbledon, and I'd see her every night at about 6 o'clock, kind of wrapping up the matches, and that was kind of a lot of how I first got into watching tennis, with those kind of highlights packages she used to. Is it Wimbledon today? I think it's
today at Wimbledon. It's now called
today at Wimbledon. Sorry, it's been a few years since I've been watching the BBC coverage before this year, so I'm a bit rusty on the lingo. But yeah, look, it's she's an excellent presenter. She's going to be hard to replace. She obviously knows her stuff, but you'd never think about her as Sue Barker, the tennis player. Half the time it's just Sue Barker, the presenter, which I think speaks volumes about how good she's been at that job, that most people will, in our generation, will view her as presenter rather than tennis player. So sorely missed. I know you're a big fan, and you'll probably give her I was going to say obituary, but that's the wrong word, but celebration.
She just, broadcasting's very, very difficult, and I know, as someone who does it very, very badly, how difficult it is to host a group of rambunctious people. Let's face it, she is on telly with some pretty loudmouth people. John McEnroe, the ultimate loudmouth, Tim Henman, who has actually become quite loudmouth, Pat Cash, Billie Jean King, Tracy Austin, talented broadcasters, but often people with lots of big opinions, and she sort of navigates it so seamlessly. And I think most people probably don't notice her, and that is actually the sign of a really good anchor, is someone who just kind of goes under the radar, and I can't remember ever making a mistake. I'm sure she has, and I'm sure people will point them out, but she just so kind of makes it sound so easy. And I always think a good broadcaster or a good presenter is someone who you wouldn't mind having sat next to you at lunch. You don't have to be friends with them, but someone who you get sat next to and you go, oh, well, that was actually quite nice, and quite inoffensive and fine. I speak as someone who is often a terrible person to sit next to at lunch, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's sad to see her go. We don't know who's going to replace her yet. Talk of Claire Balding doing it, who's someone I have a huge amount of time for. Isha Guha as well, who's been doing great work on the cricket, and I know has been working on the tennis this year as well for the first time, and seems to have gone down okay. So we'll see what it looks like. I know tennis is going to move forward, and the BBC is going to move forward. But I think for some of us, it'll always be Sue Barker. Just as football was always Des Lynam and athletics was always Steve Ryder. You just knew where you were. They were the people that you knew, and they were the people you grew up with. And I don't think you can ever replace that.
Novak seemed quite grateful to his help, reminding him it was his anniversary today as well. So
yes,
so that would know. You mentioned McEnroe, then I just wanted to quickly say before we kind of wrap things up that my housemates saw McEnroe this week, and they were very pleased to tell me they'd seen him. Do you know where they saw him?
Hemingway's. Not
Hemingway's. It's a very un-tennis related thing.
Okay, tell me.
I think apparently it's been on social media. I haven't looked at it, but he turned up at a Pearl Jam gig with his guitar and was playing Upside Down.
Yeah, so, he's very, very keen on his own guitar skills.
They were very pleased.
Super.
I didn't know who he was. They were like, "Oh, some tennis guy was there last night. What was his name?"
Jeez, amazing.
So there we go.
It's been a terrific championships. I'm looking. The sun is literally setting on the championships and on me. So I've got to try and find a hostelry that's still open and try and find some dinner. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining me, George, as always. I'm grateful that you fit me into your busy schedule.
I was going to say, I've done quite well in the second half of the tournament, haven't I? It wasn't my strongest first week of the slam, but I've grown into my own.
And for those who are missing Calvin, he is in a flat without Wi-Fi tonight, which is why he's not on. We'll try and get him later in the week. I know you're all missing him. Apart from that, thank you very much for listening, and, well, come back next time.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
When I clock out of the hospital at 6 p.m., I'm not done for the night. That's when Gamer Nurse 40 clocks in, and she's got orcs to slay. Sure, I'm playing a 13-year-old in Scranton, but he's a level 53 mage with a filthy mouth, so I need to stay on top of my game. What'd you call me? That's when I crack open a Heineken 0.0. Zero alcohol, but just as refreshing. So I can focus on stealing his gold before his mom tells him it's bedtime. Take that, kids.
Heineken 0.0. 0.0% alcohol. Now you can. Must be 21 plus to purchase. Enjoy responsibly.